Been
Yeah.
so inspired just by the way that you really invest in couples, which actually brings us to your article, which I loved it. It's called A
Mhm.
Desirable Marriage, Vulnerable or Guarded. Tell us what inspired you to write this article in particular.
Yeah, so what inspired me was really trying to break down and explain to people the value in vulnerability, the value in being open, honest, transparent
Mm,
with one another, and the damage that being guarded and defensive can do. Whether you are in a dating relationship, being engaged, or entering into marriage, there are life hurts and things that you got that people can experience, and it can be traumatic, it can be hard to deal with, and it can hurt. So naturally we're going to take that, kind of build a defense so we don't experience that again and get hurt in the same way.
mm,
So naturally, when you engage in another relationship, you take that with you, and depending on how many relationships you are in, more builds up, and now you're entering into another relationship, and it's like this new person that you're entering into this relationship with, they are paying the price essentially for others' mistakes, and
mm,
it's like you're not giving them a fair shot in the new relationship that you're in. They're taking on the burden of what you had experienced, and now you're having them pay the price. So I really wanted to allow people to understand the value in being vulnerable. Vulnerability is essential, it's critical to any long lasting marriage, and
mm,
to have a happy and successful marriage. A lot of people don't understand that. And so that's kind of what I wanted to hone in on the article,
mm.
and the many couples that I've counseled and how they communicate. It's like, well, I'm going to hit the below the belt. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that because you're not going to hurt me, kind of having these defenses. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, you really need to understand what comes out of your mouth cannot be taken back. You
Mm,
can apologize for it. You can say, I'm sorry. There's things you can try and do to kind of back out of it. But bottom line is, it can't be taken back and it will stay with them.
mm.
Yeah.
Kristina, that is so good. And you kind of touched on this as you explained what inspired you to write the article, but who exactly is this article written for? Who did you write this with in mind?
I wrote this for every couple, whether you're in a dating relationship, whether you are just getting married and fresh honeymoon stage, or you are 30 years into marriage, 40, 50 years into marriage, and you're trying to figure out, man, we went through this again, this little rough patch. What do we do? How do we navigate all those things? So this is really for anybody, even if you're some people, they are high school sweethearts and trying to find someone. So trying to develop those ways of communicating, those effective ways of communicating, and how to be in a relationship, starting to hone in on those skills
Mhm.
and to apply that so that way when you do meet the one, you are able to operate in a way where it can give you a foundation for success in it.
Mm, that's so,
Yeah.
so good. And I loved what you said just a few moments ago. You said like for like any kind of healthy, long-standing relationship, particularly marriage,
Hmm.
that it can't be successful or healthy or thriving at the level that God intended unless vulnerability is present. So
Hmm.
why would you say it's so important to practice, not just like say, yeah, vulnerability is good, but to actually put to practice vulnerability in marriage or in your um, those kind of like committed relationships that may lead into marriage?
Hmm. Yeah. So vulnerability builds trust. It builds and creates trust. It's a foundation for um, uh, a good, happy, healthy marriage. right? You're able to be vulnerable. You're able to be empathetic. You're able to break down the walls and to really listen and hear and attune to what the other person is saying. You're more so you're more so listening to hear what the other person is saying rather than listen to them in an argument to give back a rebuttal or an attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can, if cared for correctly, it can be the very thing that can increase the longevity of your marriage and have a long-lasting, healthy, and fulfilling marriage. And you and your spouse are going to be able to connect at a deeper level because you're able to let them into that deeper place versus having them at bay, right? So a lot of couples, they are vulnerable to a certain extent. I'll let you in, but only so much, right? But a lot of people, when they let them in only so much, there's that wall there and they hit that wall. And a lot of times people can tell that, okay, they're letting me in, but only so much. I'm putting up a hand here, you're not going any further, which is a problem because if somebody wants to get deeper and more connected with you, it's going to now make them withdraw and make them want to treat you in the same way. And now you guys are doing this dance of being guarded because neither one wants to get hurt. And so it's a dance that you guys are now engaging in a cycle. And it's an unhealthy cycle and it's a damaging cycle. Vulnerability increases intimacy in the marriage. It allows you both to come together and communicate on a more intimate level. Yeah. Vulnerability includes compassion, empathy, forgiveness, which all of us have hard times with. It's a task that all of us have to continue to navigate and kind of figure out. Yeah. And vulnerability is like, in a marriage, you feel like your needs are getting met. That love there is being tapped into. You feel like, okay, this person gets me, they understand me, they love me for who I am, not the fakeness that I put on.
Right? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And it can allow you, like I said, to feel truly loved and feel genuinely supported and comforted by your spouse. So that's why I think it's important to engage in and practice vulnerability. It's essential and critical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you put it that way, that like vulnerability builds trust, that it builds this intimacy, like, like that's what we all, I think at the core of who we are, we desire in our marriages and in our relationships really at large, is that we want to feel like we can be known and loved, and that the person that we're being known and loved by, that we can trust them and know that they have our heart. But you're right, it comes, those things, those wonderful things we love to experience, they come at the cost of being vulnerable. Yeah. So good. So you shared, which is where I love where we get to in some of our conversations, and in this article in particular, is like this practical next step. So like, how do we walk out vulnerability in our marriage? If we recognize, okay, I have been engaged in this cycle or the dance of being guarded, and so has my spouse, like, what are some tools that we can use to be more vulnerable?
Yeah. So forgiving past wrongs, right? How somebody has done you wrong, and working on forgiveness in that aspect, affirmation, affirming them, being empathetic, compassionate, and really having effective communication. Not effective communication, I'm going to tell you like it is, I'm going to tell you how it is, and I'm going to give you my opinion. But effective communication in the sense of vulnerability with the undertone of love, and how this person can hear what you're saying and can apply what you're saying in a loving way, right?
Yeah. That like
Yeah.
word is so like the effective piece. Cause yeah, you can communicate like saying whatever you feel, but
Yeah.
will it be received by the way that you're saying it? Yeah.
Yeah. There's differences in this. There's a there's a difference in vulnerability and being guarded.
Mm,
There's distinct changes and differences, and um, there will be drastic effects of the relationship that you're in
mm.
if you learn how to apply it in the right way. Yeah.
So good. Christina, as I was reading through this article, I thought to myself, okay, how can I be more intentional with vulnerability? And I love that piece that you mentioned in the beginning, but also you allude to here is that forgiving past wrongs. Is
Hmm.
that sometimes like when it comes to being guarded, we are giving people, I guess, the consequences of somebody else's previous decisions. And so
Hmm.
learning how to process maybe some of those things that people did to us in the past that hurt us, that we're carrying into the present, that now is causing us to be guarded with those that we love the most.
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
Yeah.
And you have to learn how to um, apply it. You have to learn how to um, engage in vulnerability. It's really hard. A
Hmm.
lot of people have a hard time being vulnerable. Some people don't even know what vulnerability is. And so it's like, okay, let's try and figure this out. Some people are not even in touch with their emotions to even begin to engage in the idea of vulnerability, right?
Hmm.
And it's very, very critical. It's so critical. Um, I just want to touch on something really quick. Um, it allows you, like I was saying, it allows you to connect on a deeper level with your spouse. And it's about being open, honest, and transparent. I like to give the acronym HOT:
Hmm.
honest, open, and transparent. That was actually something I heard a pastor, Michael Todd, say. And it just hit home. And I was like, oh my goodness, like that is so true. And yeah, you guys are able to become more emotionally intimate when you're vulnerable.
Mm.
Um, and your needs are met. Um, and it can help test the strength of your marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Mm.
can break down walls, and it allows you to be willing to learn and to listen.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And it allows you to be truly loved. Yeah. Whereas guarded is like the opposite. It's like, hey, I know what you're gonna say, I know what you're gonna do. I'm gonna I'm gonna react this way because I
Hmm.
need to let you know that you're not gonna hurt me again,
Hmm.
right? And guarded is not something um, that your spouse, I would say, deserves
Mm.
because they married you with the intention of loving you for the lifetime.
Mm.
Yeah, for sickness and in health, richer for poorer, till death do you part. They're in it for the long haul,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
So why would they intentionally want to hurt you? There's if you guys are engaging in a guarded dance in that cycle, you're both gonna like be shooting the gun at each other. And
Mm.
over time you're gonna kill it, the relationship.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's so good. Or I love that you're saying you're going to kill it because that doesn't necessarily mean like divorce, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just like the vibrancy, the
Mm-hmm.
intimacy, that trust, and that is the lifeblood
Mm-hmm.
relationship is that vulnerability, the trust, the feeling safe with one another. And so I love that
Mm-hmm.
you're leaning into that. And so that acronym is HOT: honest, open, and
Transparent.
transparent. I love that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
HOT.
I use it all the time. And he's a great pastor in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So
Yes.
he's great.
I love reading his stuff on like dating and marriage. I think his,
Yes, he has a great book out now too.
yeah,
Relationship goals, I think.
yeah, such
Yeah.
a good resource, so practical. So awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Christina, what would be your final piece of advice or encouragement for a couple that is struggling with vulnerability right now?
Oh, if you are struggling with vulnerability, one, I would say to get into counseling.
Mm,
Yeah, go on ahead and get into counseling and learn how to tackle those emotions, why you're so defensive and guarded, why it's so hard for you to um, engage in a deeper level with your spouse.
mm,
Yeah. Why is it so hard for you to forgive, right? Why is it so hard for you to effectively communicate with your spouse with love, right? Those are very important things. And so I would definitely recommend getting into counseling, um, just really being vulnerable, honest, open, and transparent with your spouse.
mm,
If you're struggling with that, learn how to effectively communicate, learn how to affirm your spouse, learn how to forgive past things. Yeah, any traumas or anything that went on, learn to forgive that. Learn to work through that, right?
mm,
Let your spouse know that, hey, I'm here for you. When you engage in empathy, right? You're saying, hey, I'm putting myself in your shoes. So being in their shoes, would you respond to them? Like, so if you are saying, gonna say something to your spouse and you flip the script, would I like it if they said that to me,
mm.
right? In this place of hurt, then it's gonna help you it's gonna help guide you in how you should communicate with them. And it's gonna also over time allow you to communicate with love effectively.
Mm,
Okay. Whereas compassion is different, right? Compassion is knowing that they're hurting, knowing that they're suffering, right? It's different than empathy because you're putting that action behind it and wanting to alleviate that pain,
mhm. Yeah.
take it from them, right? And affirming them is like giving that emotional support, right? And connecting with your spouse and building the marriage. And it's like that action or process of affirming them or being affirmed. So, hey, you did great at the chores today. Thank you for doing that for me today. You did such a great job. Versus expecting them to take out the trash or to do something, right? And not saying anything because that's what they should have done,
Mm,
right? And then, but when they do something wrong, you're constantly saying something negative. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And you're not helping them. You're
yeah.
not affirming them. And so learning how to navigate those things, learning how to um, apply them will be something that you can gain tools in counseling to do, how to cope with it, how to effectively communicate with the undertone of love. Okay, reframe. I hear you're saying this, but what this means to me is this.
Mm,
Is this accurate? Is this right? Right? And if they say no, you guys keep going back and forth. And so that way both of you guys can gain understanding of
mm.
what you're really trying to say.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Effective
love it.
communication is so important.
Love it because like as you're sharing, like what you're sharing is in part so inspirational and encouraging, but then in the other part, it is also so practical because sometimes we can be encouraged and inspired and then be like, now what? Or we
Yeah.
have information that we're not inspired at all. But you have this
Mhm.
like beautiful balance of the two that it's inspiring and it's encouraging and you're giving like a vision to go after, but then you're also giving the practical next steps for those things. And so thank you for that. Um, I'm personally inspired and reminded of just the importance of practicing vulnerability in my own life and the beauty.
Mhm.
Yes, the challenge that it is, but the beauty
Mhm.
that comes from it.
Mhm. Yeah. It's a challenge. It is a challenge. A lot of people are challenged with it. I'm challenged with it at all times. Not all times, but sometimes, right?
Good.
And as you continue to do this, it becomes easier and easier, right? To remain in that level and to allow that your spouse into that inner place of you.
Mm.
you'll really feel loved, like they know you and they love you and accept you for who you really are.
Mm,
And it's a beautiful thing. Give it a
so
shot.
yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have your article linked wherever you're listening or watching this video. There is a link in the notes for Kristina's article, A Desirable Marriage, Vulnerable or Guarded. And you can read through in more detail what Kristina just shared with us. And honestly, I would encourage you to go over this article with your spouse. Like, how can we grow? Like, how can we apply more of this together? Like, I'm already thinking like, yeah, this would be a wonderful conversation to have with my husband. Like, how do we continuously grow? Like, this isn't like a finish line. This is something that's continuously evolving and we're learning and growing in and leaning into. So thank you so much, Kristina.
Yeah, my pleasure.